Welcome into this edition of the Exxon Podcast. I'm Neil McCready. I'll be flying solo with you guys today. Hope you send me some questions in the thread. Might even take some calls. Who knows? It's 1:13. Pretty much most of my work for the day is done, so got time for you guys. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. First, let me tell you about the Oxford Exxon, Highway 6 West in Oxford, right next door to the Oxford Crystal, which is another one of our sponsors. We got a beer garden up today presented by the Oxford Crystal that Jeffrey Wright and I spoke for about an hour. That's up. And, so you can do that. Oxford Exxon, they've got plate lunch specials, touchless gas. You can get that if you're in a hurry. Download the Speed Pass Plus app on your phone there at the Oxford Exxon. Take care of them. Next time you're coming through Oxford, leaving Oxford, stop by the Oxford Exxon. Make sure they know that you heard about them here on this podcast. We would appreciate it. I'm coming to you from the Clark Ford Studios. Clark Ford's in Amory, Mississippi, 662-257-1900, 662-257-1900. Call that number. Ask for Corey Clark. Tell Corey what Ford product you're looking for. He will send you a quote within 15 minutes in business hours, right to the bottom line. No hassle, no haggle. You get your quote, and the rest is completely up to you. You can shop that quote around, or you can do what I've done, what I recommend that you do, and that's get into a Clark Ford today. Corey always says he wants to be your truck guy. He wants to be your car guy. He'll prove that to you when you make the call. 662-257-1900. Guest will join us throughout the week on the Rafters Music and Food Hotline. Rafters Music and Food on the Square in Oxford. Be a great place tonight to watch Game 6 of the World Series. The Dodgers can win the first title since 1988 with a win tonight over Tampa. It's Snell versus Gonsolin in that game. Tampa can send it to a Game 7 with a win tonight. Game 7 would be tomorrow night. So Major League Baseball apparently going to get to the finish line. The Big Ten should take notice. Nobody ever had to do a 21-day quarantine or anything. So anyway, that's there tonight. You can do that. And then football starts again on Thursday. Throughout the weekend, Ole Miss at Vanderbilt, 3 o'clock on Saturday. That game on the SEC network there in Nashville, and you could watch it at Rafters. I know they would love to have you. Also, Rafters New Albany is open, as is Rafters on the Water this weekend there at Sardis. So all of that on our MPW digital network of podcast. I mentioned the beer garden. That's up. Also, SEC football and beyond. Chris Landry and I talked earlier today. We talked a good bit about the big controversy in the SEC, the Ole Miss Auburn game. Ole Miss recovered a fumble in the end zone, what should have been a fumble. The SEC kind of did their little passive-aggressive thing yesterday. Lane Kiffin got fined $25,000. He took to Twitter a lot yesterday to point out some of the absurdity of that all. And I just wrote a story about it. It's up on the site. Talked to Tyler Knight, talked to Miles Battle, asked about their thoughts about Lane Kiffin's Twitter. If you're not familiar with it, Lane Kiffin last night tweeted, "Where can I find 25,000 pennies?" Anybody who does some math, 25,000 pennies does not equal $25,000. Then he came back. It was pretty funny. He says, "Was just checking to see if SEC would review my math to get it right this time. After further review, it's 2.5 million pennies. Thanks for stopping to get it right," which was cold. That was funny. He then said he was worried. He's put up a picture of his son, Knox, on a boat. Knox sticking his head out from underneath. And he said he's worried his college fund is gone at Ole Miss football at SEC. Continued on today. Someone put up his rant from yesterday on the teleconference. Kiffin says, "Feel bad for our players and fans," one of his more serious ones. And then there was a dog. There's a dog named Finley in Oxford that I hope he's been found. Beautiful 2-year-old golden retriever. Finley's been lost. It's been a big story in Oxford. People are trying to find Finley, and someone named at Big Head on Twitter says, "Don't ask SEC refs if they've seen him. Hope the dog is found safe." And Lane Kiffin retweeted that with a crying, laughing emoji. Wrote a story today talking to Tylen Knight, talking to Miles Battle about how the players notice. I'll give you a quote from Tylen. It's in the story. It's rebelgrove.com, part of the Rivals Network. He says, quote, "I just feel like that just goes to show he has our back. He's really for us. He really has our back. It's a perfect example to show he's really behind us. We most definitely take notice of the things he says, some good, some not so good. We all see it. It's just locker room talk. At the end of the day, we know he's out there coaching and he wants nothing but the best for us." Miles Battle said, "It was kind of funny. I saw the little picture of his son. I like it because he's standing up for us. He's a player's coach. Him doing that for us brings him closer to us, makes him more humanized versus being like a big entity as a head coach." In case you missed it, the SEC yesterday came out and said the replay official should have stopped the game for further review of the play. In the football officiating replay process, every play is reviewed, but when appropriate, the game is stopped for further review. Because the play was not appropriately stopped for further review, the necessary slow-motion view of the play was not viewed by the replay official to determine if the ruling on the field should have been reversed. The SEC office conducted a review of the play and appropriately communicated its findings above to Ole Miss head football coach Lane Kiffin and other athletics department personnel per conference protocol. However, Mr. Kiffin's use of social media Saturday following the game to publicly criticize officiating is in violation of conference bylaws and commissioners' regulations that govern sportsmanship and communication with the conference office on officiating issues. Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin has been fined $25,000 for his use of social media Saturday after the game, made in violation of SEC bylaw 10.5 related to officiating in the Auburn at Ole Miss football game of October the 4th. For those who are wondering what the bylaw says, the following is SEC Commissioner's Regulation, Football Officials, SEC Bylaw 10.5. Criticism of officials or the officiating program by institutional personnel is absolutely prohibited. Comments on officiating are to be directed only to the conference office. All reports or comments pertaining to officiating or game management responsibilities or concerning student athletes, coaches, or officials shall be directed only to the conference office. Public comments related to officiating by officials, coaches, or institutional personnel are prohibited. So here's my problem. My problem is the SEC said nothing. They just said, "We're pissed off that you dared say something." They're pissed off that he went to social media, had some fun with them, and made them look bad. The SEC always does this. I tweeted this last night. Just come out and do one of two things. Either come out and say, "Hey, we screwed up. We made a mistake. It happens. Players make mistakes. Certainly Ole Miss players made mistakes in that game. Coaches made mistakes. Lane Kiffin made mistakes in that game. He played John Rice Plumlee when he shouldn't have played him. Gave away plays. Gave away possessions. That's what he could do. They could do that. Or they could double down and say, "You know what? There wasn't clear and convincing evidence. You needed a Zapruder-like breakdown of that to find it." And then be done with it. They could have done that too. People would have criticized either way. But when you do the deal where you say, "We're going to fine you, and we looked at it, and we should have stopped it, but we didn't. Move on. Don't say anything," that's crap. That's mealy-mouthed. And that's their problem. That's why no one believes them. Just come out and say, "We missed it. It happens. It should have been reviewed. The review official has been suspended. We fined Coach Kiffin because he's not supposed to criticize. He knows that. He knew it when he did it," etc. That's always been my problem with the league. Just come out and say, "We missed it. It's a bad call. Move on. Next." Speaking of next, yeah, I agree with Grindhard in the thread says the game was coached just as worse as it was officiated. It was not it was not a particularly well coached game on either side, for that matter. Humans officiate games. They miss calls. No one has a problem with the call on the field. They should have stopped it. They should have reviewed it. I've told y'all my theory. I'm more and more convinced that I got it right. I think someone in that replay booth took a fast look at it and said, let's get out of here. Let's go. Keep going. Let's play. The stop on that would have taken 10 minutes. And it would have revealed, again, what we already know now, which was they blew the whistle too fast. They blew the whistle too fast. That stopped the play. They weren't equipped for it. Chris Landry and I talked about this a lot. Chris has a lot of opinions on it, about how they've got to take the officiating of the game upstairs. I don't necessarily agree with that completely. I just think stop the play. Just stop it. Look at it. Or better yet, do what the NFL does from the officiating standpoint. And that's very simple. Come out and tell your officials, don't blow your whistle until you know that the play is done. Let the play happen. Let the play happen. Because in this case, if nobody blows the whistle and nobody makes the signal to stop the play, Tyler Knight recovers the ball in the end zone, which would have been ruled on the field a touchdown. Then that play, because it's a scoring play, is automatically reviewed. And one of two things happens. Either they look at the review, at the replay, and they say, yep, it touched him, he recovered it, touchdown Ole Miss, you guys can kick an extra point now. And then you play the rest of the game, and it's not a big controversy. Or you look at it, and 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 you say, we just don't see where it hit him. You overrule the touchdown, you call it a touchback, and you move on. At least that way you looked at it. People can say, well, what? I can't believe you didn't see it, whatever. But you get a ruling. You get it done, and that's not the topic. Because the problem is Ole Miss and Auburn played a pretty entertaining football game. It was 14-14 at the half. It was 21-21 after three quarters. And it was 28-27 Ole Miss with 5:43 to go. And so instead of us talking about a really entertaining football game, we're talking about an officiating play. Red Hog 1 Arky says, sounds familiar. Don't stop the play. Exactly. Instead of us talking about what would have been a great finish in Auburn 2.5 weeks ago. Because that play, if you don't blow the whistle and you let the play out, one of two things happens that afternoon at Jordan-Hare. Either Auburn recovers what would have been a Bo Nix fumble. They rushed the field goal unit out onto the field because they didn't have any timeouts left. The clock would have been ticking. And they hurriedly kick a field goal that either goes in or doesn't go in. Or Arkansas recovers the fumble, and Arkansas pulls off an upset over what was at then a ranked Auburn team. Either one of those stories is better than officiating, where Sam Pittman on that Monday says, hey, I'm at peace with it. That's what he said. I'm at peace with it. Cool. Lane Kiffin's not at peace with it. He said as much. Be much easier to do that, but I don't know how you get that done. They're able to do that in the NFL, but the NFL officials are significantly better than college officials. College officials make mistakes. They need the replay to be better. They need the replay booth to be better. Someone should have stopped the game and said, hey, we got to take a better look at this. They didn't want to because they'd blown the whistle. I'm convinced of it. No one's ever going to admit it. Someone will eventually. Someone at Ole Miss or somewhere will one day whisper to me, hey, here's what they said. But to this point, I don't know it. So anyway, Ole Miss and Vanderbilt at 3 o'clock on Saturday. I've got on the screen the SEC games for the week. My friend Chris Lee, who covers Vanderbilt for the for Rivals.com, sent me a couple of texts a little earlier today. He said no talk of not playing today at Derek Mason's press conference. And then he said, that said, I don't think they're out of the woods, referring to Vanderbilt. I think tomorrow will be a big day for test for them. Vanderbilt, as of last week, was having a lot of COVID issues, a lot of contact tracing, that kind of thing. Their numbers are down. They've got to have 53 scholarship players to pull it off. And as of this particular moment, they're good. They're fine. But if they're going to if they're going to be able to play this weekend, they can't have any setbacks. So I know the league has kind of its fingers crossed about Vanderbilt. Its fingers crossed about Florida. The Gators scheduled to play Missouri on Saturday night, 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern. Florida having some issues with COVID as well on the flip side of those. So we'll get to some of your questions in the thread. Might even open up the phones in a minute. First, let me tell you, Rebel fans, tune into Reb Talk with the voice of the Rebels, David Kellum, on Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Be sure to submit your questions to Coach Lane Kiffin by visiting Facebook and searching Ole Miss Athletics to stream live each Thursday at 6. I can tell you this podcast also brought to you by Jupiter Security Systems. Based in Madison, Mississippi, Jupiter Security Systems provides your business with a help desk, allowing you to get software at a much cheaper price than you would pay going directly to Microsoft or the different cybersecurity services. It's basically ADT for your computer systems and data. It's very affordable with a flat price, no hidden add-ons. For more information, call Eric, 601-519-9583, or email info, I-N-F-O, at jupitersecurity.net. Also brought to you by Community Mortgage. It's located in Oxford, Memphis, DeSoto County, and Chattanooga. 30 years old this year. It's one of the oldest mortgage companies in the Southeast. All of the underwriting and the processing is done in Memphis. So you're getting local underwriting that understands your market. It's also the leader in condo financing in the Oxford market. So go and ask Jason Lowe about Community Mortgage's float down option, which allows you to lock in the current rate. But if rates go down before you close, you can get the lower rate. It's JLowe, J-L-O-W-E, at communitymtg.com. The College Corner is your one-stop Rebel shop. 2 locations in the Jackson area. In Ridgeland, the College Corner is next to Fleet Feet, and Flowood is next to Half Shell. If you don't live in Jackson, it's not a problem. You can visit the College Corner at collegecornerstore.com. Plus, you can find them on Facebook and Instagram. So whether you're tailgating in Oxford or homegating with friends and family, the College Corner has you covered for game day. They have the largest selection of Rebel gear in central Mississippi. Throughout the month of October, mention Rebel Grove at checkout. Get 15% off your entire purchase. You can also use it online. Just put Rebel Grove in the coupon tab at checkout. All right, I'll open phones if y'all want me to. I'll do that. And if anybody wants to call in, you can. I'll open up the Skype. I'll also, there's the phone line right there, 662-259-0991. Can also tell you there's going to be some college basketball tomorrow. We get to talk to Kermit Davis. I can tell you one of the topics is going to be a growing feeling in college basketball that this is going to perhaps be a conference-only schedule this year. Nobody can get on the same page with all of the COVID stuff. Nobody can get on the same page regarding protocols. All of these tournaments, the bubbles in Orlando, almost certainly not going to happen. Non-league games are going to be an issue. I think you're going to see revised conference schedules. I don't think anybody has any idea what that's going to look like, what the NCAA tournament's going to look like. Because here's the thing, if you can't get all of these leagues to agree to some form of a common protocol, how can you bring 8 teams or 16 teams or whatnot into a place for an NCAA tournament regional? Now, on the flip side, the NCAA tournament desperately needs the tournament. They've lost so much money. They lost so very much money from not having it a year ago. They had insurance for a year ago. They don't have insurance now. They can't handle 2 years without a tournament. They've got to get the tournament, yet the tournament is scheduled for March. You've got a perhaps future president. We're going to elect a president in 7 days. Joe Biden's talking about a dark winter. It's very clear if you watch television right now. You can tell that there's a lot of media talking about spikes in COVID. I mean, you get on Twitter today and all the trending stuff is about COVID. So if you can't have I don't know how you do that. I don't know how if you're not willing to take some chances and bring teams together, I don't know how you have a 64 or 65 team tournament. And if you play an SEC only schedule, It's 14 teams. You only play 18 games. It's tough. I don't know how you evaluate that. How do you compare the SEC to the ACC, the ACC to the Big Ten, the Big Ten to the SEC, the ACC to the Big 12? How do you do that? If teams are only playing inside their own conference, it's not like football where you can basically just take the champions because it's a 4-team tournament. I mean, we can look at it right now, and you know who's going to be in the college football playoff. It's going to be Alabama or Georgia, maybe both. It's going to be Ohio State, almost certainly now. Wisconsin's quarterback is out 3 weeks because he's tested positive for a virus. He has no symptoms, but he's out 3 weeks according to Big Ten protocol. So let's call it Ohio State. You know Clemson's going to win the ACC, so they'll get in. And they'll take somebody else. So that's easy. But you're trying to seed a 64-team tournament so that you can make the money? It's impossible to do if you don't have any non-league games, where you don't have the SEC Big 12 challenge where you can look at those games. If you don't have, there's no, how do you evaluate a mid-major, a MAC team? You just can't do it. Ben says you can have a 64-team tournament to determine it. Look, I know you're joking, but unless they'll get over themselves a little bit with some of these things and play, this is what I don't understand. I really don't. I don't get this part of it. I don't understand how college athletics, the people that make these decisions, can't look at the NBA. They got it done. They can't look at Major League Baseball, which wasn't in a bubble until the second round of the playoffs. They're within 24 hours or less of crowning a champion. The NFL's playing. They have some COVID issues, but they play. College football's playing. I don't know why in college basketball you can't just admit, hey, we're going to have some issues and play the games. This is going to impact college baseball too. I know a lot of you out there, big college baseball fans, you're super excited about packing a stadium this spring. I don't think it's going to happen. The way people are talking today, I don't think it's going to happen. I've got questions about next year. I've asked people about next football season. You don't get any answers. Nobody is willing to come out and say, hey, look, we got to get past this and we got to play. And until that happens, I don't really know what the answers are. My best guess on how much 2.5 million pennies weigh, Brian. You think if they went to every bank in North Mississippi, you could even find 2.5 million pennies? That's a lot. It's a lot of, I guess, I don't know. Remember when you were a kid and you'd collect jars full of them and you'd take them, and it was hard to do. I'm being accused of bumming people out. I'm sorry, Avery. Phone line's open, 662-259-0991. It's just my thing, though. At some point, I had this conversation with people at my daughter's school. They sent out an email that was encouraging testing. And I sent back a response that said, why? She has no symptoms. She doesn't need to be tested. There's no reason to go get tested. And they're like, oh, no, we need to get more tested. And I said, it seems like you're hunting for cases so that you can justify doing this spring what you've done this fall. And they're like, no, it's just the opposite of that. Like I said, at some point, these schools are going to have some courage and do the right thing and open up, let young people in. You could have more people in the pavilion, for example. Let the student section be full. Socially distance the rest of the place. We need to get a grip. People ask me why I'm so locked into some of the politics right now. It's that reason. We need to get a grip. People are out hunting for a virus. It's ridiculous. If you don't have symptoms, you don't need to test. And if you have symptoms, you need to stay home. Quarantine for 10 days. Be done with it. And if you are, it's just my opinion, if you're someone who is susceptible, you're diabetic, you're a smoker, you're obese, elderly, immunocompromised, you don't need to get out. If you're someone who's not really at risk, the odds are overwhelming in your favor that if you get it, you'll be fine. And then sometimes there's just about risk. If that's a risk you're not willing to take, don't. Don't take the risk. But it's my opinion, there's no reason that we can't have a non-conference basketball season. There's no reason we can't have an NCAA tournament. There's no reason people can't sit outside at a baseball game at Swayze Field and enjoy the weather and watch a game and have a beer and hang out with your friends and let your kids play on the playground. No reason. Other than politics. And I've never in my life seen I don't know that I've ever seen any one issue. You guys tell me in the thread. I've never seen any one issue be more politicized than COVID. If you lean to the right, the further you lean to the right, the more you sort of dismiss COVID as something worthy of a shutdown. The more you lean to the left, the more you want the government to control it. I've yet to understand precisely what it is that a government, any government, is supposed to do about an airborne aerosolized virus to make it go away. Mac Weirdo Show says, I have a friend from Poland. He said COVID was a big issue until they had an election earlier this year. Then all of a sudden he said it wasn't an issue anymore. Really made me start thinking. Look, I hope regardless of what happens next Tuesday, I hope that's the case. It needs to go away. Or not go away. I mean, it's not going away. It's a virus. It's not going away. Maybe there will be a vaccine. I heard last night there's real optimism about a vaccine by June. I don't know how many people. You're telling me that everybody out there is going to go get a vaccine that's government produced? I mean, that's not believable. I don't believe that. I don't know that I'd take it. I don't get the flu vaccine every time. Just not that complicated. But if you don't want to take a chance and you don't want to go to a game, you don't have to. No one's going to make you. Nobody. Never going to be forced to. If somebody comes gunpoint and says you got to go, you have a problem. Otherwise, don't go. You can watch on television, but the people who want to get a game, want to go to a game, should be able to go to a game. Players who want to play should be able to play. They've told players it's a free year. If you don't want to play, you can opt out. No penalty. Would I take the vaccine, Dustin? I wouldn't get at the front of the line, but I wouldn't necessarily be completely vehemently opposed to it. I'd think about it. If enough people did it, yeah, I'd do it. I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. I mean, kind of like the officiating thing. I don't believe for 1 minute that the officials on the field were like, hey, this is Auburn, this is Ole Miss, we got to protect Auburn. I don't think they think like that. Because if you walk around the league and you talk to people, Auburn thinks they're getting screwed. LSU thinks that Alabama gets protected. Alabama thinks LSU gets protected. It's kind of like that. I'm not a big conspiracy guy. So if people come out and tell me that it's kind of, it all goes together to me, really, in a lot of ways. It's people at the beginning of this. There were people who are now saying it was something different than it is today. I don't hold everybody accountable for everything that they ever said. The officials in Birmingham, Eric Space Orange says, what about the officials in Birmingham though? They got to put the office somewhere. If they put the office in Atlanta, are we going to suddenly, every time Georgia gets a call, are we going to say it's because they're protecting Georgia? You got to put it somewhere. Birmingham makes a smart place to put it. Simple as that. Guys, do us a favor. Go to deadsoxy.com, DEADSOXY.com, and enter promo code Rebel Grove at checkout. Get 30% off your order. Deadsoxy.com. Blue Delta jeans. You guys have seen Chase and I modeling Blue Delta jeans. We'll be doing that again on Saturday after Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. We'll do that on Hand Raise, guys. You can get in touch with them as well. They'll be open 10 to 6 Saturday, all week, including Saturday. If that doesn't work for your schedule, though, you can book a time just for you. It's info@bluedeltajeans.com for an email, or hop into their social media at Blue Delta Jeans on Twitter, on Instagram. Put up a Mind on My Money yesterday. That's brought to you by Pinnacle Trust. Pinnacle Trust, based in Madison, Mississippi, but it represents clients in more than 20 states. They have advisors in multiple states as well. Founded in 1997, Pinnacle Trust provides detailed, specialized investment management, financial planning, retirement planning for individuals and businesses, and much more. At Pintrust, investing is treated like a commodity. Decisions are made using objective information and research, not emotions. So regardless of your level of wealth, Pinnacle Trust will sit down with you, listen to your goals, study your expenses, and put forth a comprehensive, detailed financial and retirement plan built just for you. It's pintrust.com, PINNtrust.com. Mention you heard about Pinnacle Trust on the podcast. You'll get 10% off your first year's fees. Also brought to you by Regency Travel Incorporated in Memphis. John Edwards and the people at Regency Travel Incorporated. If you've been thinking about a trip, maybe a holiday trip, maybe you're wanting to get away next summer, hoping this is gone by then, and you want to go ahead and plan a trip that you'll never forget, the people in your family will never forget, get in touch with John. He's part of Virtuoso. It's a worldwide network of travel partners that allows John to throw in added values, unique benefits simply not available to other travelers. 901-494-3387, or send him an email at jedwards@regencytravel.net. First-time clients can save $50 off their first booked trip just by telling John you heard about Regency Travel on the podcast. And we're brought to you by Grenada Nissan. If you're in the market for a Nissan vehicle, Grenada Nissan's the place to go. They've got a complete selection of new and previously owned Nissan vehicles, great lease deals as well. It's Grenada, NissanUSA.com. All right, I can take your questions in the thread if you've got one. Don't know how long we're going to stay today. Going to be an earlier show tomorrow by a little bit because I've got to get on a Zoom call with Ole Miss basketball at 2 o'clock. We get Kermit Davis, 2 players. Yeah, I think you could move the SEC office to Nashville. Nobody's going to accuse the league of protecting Vanderbilt. And yeah, if they got a call or two, we could all feel sorry for them. May even make sense to move it there. I just don't think this is about that, though. I don't. I know everybody disagrees. It makes for a great conspiracy. I just don't buy it. At no point. Just don't think it happens like that. I think what happened in the game is the same thing that happened in the Arkansas-Auburn game. Officials anticipated. They're not particularly good, and they anticipated. They're not as good as NFL refs. One anticipated that Nix was going to spike the ball, and the other came across the field anticipating that it was a touchback. In both cases, they probably did the right thing. All right, Jay wants to know what's on my podcast playlist these days. All right, I'll tell you. My podcast list is kind of boring, honestly. Wicked Game, American Elections Wicked Game is on. I'm up to episode 57. I'm up to the new one, Romney versus Obama, the rich boy. So I guess that's what, 2012? So yes, we're about there. Hard to believe. It's been a fantastic series by the people at Wondery. Lindsey Graham, not the Lindsey Graham who's running for the Senate, but the other Lindsey Graham, is incredible. Really well done. Dr. Death Season 2 is coming out. I loved Dr. Death Season 1. If you liked it, you'll like this one as well. It says, in 2013, patients in Michigan thought Farid Fatah was that doctor. Says if someone you love is diagnosed with cancer, you want them to get the best treatment from the best doctors. In 2013, patients in Michigan thought Farid Fatah was that doctor. Between his prestigious education, years of experience, and pleasant bedside manner, Fatah was everything you could want in a doctor. But he was not who he appeared to be. From Wondery, this is a story of hundreds of patients in Michigan, a doctor, and a poisonous secret. I'll definitely add that one to the mix. I've been listening to a lot of the Adam Carolla show lately, just because it makes me laugh, change of thought, just a change of pace a little bit. I've listened to a good bit of American Scandal. You guys will laugh at me, but I kind of like the Megyn Kelly show. She has some really good guests. She's a really good interviewer. I don't ever listen to her whole show, but I listen to some of the interviews she does. She has some good stuff, like Mark Cuban, Alan Dershowitz, she had Candace Owens. She has people that talk about politics. She gets a lot of pollsters on. She did a great interview with Adam Carolla that really kind of got me into the show. I've been listening to Reasonable Doubt with Adam Carolla and Mark Garagos. And then I've been listening to a podcast called The Sneak. It's done by USA Today. It's kind of bizarre, kind of weird, but I like it. It's my podcast list. I don't listen to much music at all. I know that's weird, but I really don't. If I'm in the car with the kids or something, I'll listen to what they're playing or whatever, but I just don't listen to much music. When I'm in the house, when I'm in the house, I'll turn the TV on, but I don't ever listen to music. And if I listen to background stuff, it's podcast, if I'm not really paying a lot of attention to it. So the Southern Miss coach, the interim coach, just got the job at Austin Peay today. I know I should have his name. I don't have it right here on me. Someone's asked me about Rich Rodriguez. I think Rich Rodriguez as a head coach would be a bad move there. If they're going to hire someone, I've said this for a while, I'd hire Derek Nix and maybe let Derek Nix bring in Rich Rodriguez as an offensive coordinator. I just wouldn't want him. Maybe Rodriguez would be a better recruiter. He'd give you a bigger name. He'd give you more national appeal, if you will. Derek Nix has been in the state for 13 years. He went to school there. He's a legend there. He knows every high school coach, every junior college coach in the state. He's been on, Houston Nutt's staff, Hugh Freeze's staff, Matt Luke's staff, and now Lane Kiffin's staff. Think about how many young coaches he's been around, guys who were like grad assistants or consultants or whatnot, that he could get some of those guys to come on. He could give a lot of people their coaching break. Who knows? Maybe he would give somebody like Shea Hodge a break. I don't know. If I'm Southern Miss, that's the gamble that I take. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I do something like that, though. I think Derek would be perfect at it. I've always thought that. Makes a ton of sense for him. And I'm told Derek would like the job. Now, I've not talked to Derek at all, but I've talked to people who are aware of him, aware of his thoughts, and I think he's interested. And I think Southern Miss is interested in him. To me, that just... They can't have a lot of money right now. Southern Miss can't. Think of how much... I mean, look at the SEC teams that are all operating at massive deficits right now. Imagine what it's like at a place like Southern Miss. You were already struggling to fill up your stadium. Now you can't put anyone in it, hardly. You lost your buy-in games. You lost like the game where you go to Tennessee and get skull-drugged, but you get $1.5 million. That's gone. Yeah, Mike McIntyre, who's defensive coordinator at Memphis, the former Ole Miss defensive coordinator, he turned down Austin Peay to stay at Memphis, which tells you Austin Peay has no money. No money. Like Philip Shue makes a joke about Phil Longo. I don't think USM could pay him what North Carolina pays him to be a coordinator. The money's a different deal right now. Total game changer. It's another reason that some of these schools are going to have some courage here soon and say, hey, this doesn't work. We can't keep doing this. We've got to get moving. We've got to get back to normal. We've got to open up our arenas. We have to open up our stadiums. We've got to bring people in. We've got to play games. You can't keep doing this. It doesn't work. Brooks Jones wants to know how Ole Miss fans think of Houston Nutt. I don't know about the fans. I'll tell you what I think of Nutt. I mean, he's fine doing what he's doing. I'd love to get him on the show. It would be a really interesting. Parrish Alford had him on his podcast, but Parrish didn't ask him the stuff that I would ask. I would like to dive much more deep into what all happened at Ole Miss. He came here, and in 2008, he did one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen. And I've been around some really good teams. I covered an LSU team that won the national championship in 2003. I covered an Auburn team that went undefeated in 2004. I've covered good teams. It was one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen. He took a completely mentally defeated team, rehabbed it, and by the end of the season, it was one of the best teams in the country. But he never built on it. He couldn't recruit. And by 2010, his roster was falling apart. The discipline inside of his program was falling apart. He brought in Jeremiah Masoli, who was a giant Band-Aid for the better part of a year. And then it completely fell apart. 2011 may have been the worst coaching job I've ever seen. I can't think of any example that was definitely worse than 2011 from the very beginning. And that season fell apart really quickly. Fell apart, ironically, with a loss at Vanderbilt. They lost to BYU. I think they beat Southern Illinois, if I have that right. Then they went to Vanderbilt and got just mauled by a Vanderbilt team that at the time was not well thought of. And it spiraled from there. That game cost actually, Grind, I did see Chiswick in 12. That was a bad team. But in 11, that team quit. And by the end of the season, I mean, look, if 1/10 of the rumors are true about what was happening inside that program, it's a wonder that they even did what they did. They were getting blown out by Louisiana Tech. It was so bad that the last game at Mississippi State, Dan Mullen just didn't have the taste for it. He just let it go. You mentioned Chiswick in 12, Grind. It was one of the things that really benefited Hugh Freeze in his first year at Ole Miss. He walked into a couple of games. He got Arkansas. It was the Petrino thing that happened. So he got Arkansas during the interim, beat them in Little Rock. And then he got Auburn at Vaught-Hemingway in 2008. Late enough in the season that the Tigers were just a shell. And, it's 2012. And Freeze's team was playing pretty well. So he got that win. Speaking of 2012, Grind, I'll throw you a question here in the stream. Today's the 8-year anniversary of two things. It's the 8-year anniversary of Ole Miss's win at War Memorial in Little Rock against Arkansas, and it's also the 8-year anniversary of one of the most consequential trades in professional sports history. Giving you a second to type, Grind. See if you know it. 8 years ago today, the Oklahoma City Thunder traded James Harden to the Houston Rockets for Kevin Martin and a pick that turned into Steven Adams and something else. Completely changed the shape of multiple franchises. Changed the Rockets completely, obviously. Gave them a franchise player that's still their franchise player today. The Thunder actually took a step forward before they took steps back. A year later, the Thunder were actually had more wins in 2013 with Kevin Martin than they did with James Harden coming off their bench. But long term, that wasn't a smart trade. Probably was the first major step in Kevin Durant leaving. It helped to close their championship window. Always wondered how that would be viewed differently today if Russell Westbrook doesn't hurt his knee in I guess what was that, game 2 of the first round of the playoffs against the Rockets. The Thunder ended up winning that series, but then they lost to the Grizzlies, and that might have been as close as they ever. Well, they got closer later, but that team, if that team wins the title, and it's my opinion that team would have won the title had Westbrook not gotten hurt, we might not view that trade the way we do today. But because of the way that trade went down, and then the way that the injuries happened to Westbrook, and then to Durant, and then to Ibaka, and then they never won, and they blew it. They blew the 3-1 lead in 16 against the Warriors, and Durant left. Everyone says, "Oh, it was the worst trade ever." You win a title, and no one says that because Harden's not won a title. Yeah, you're right. If anybody wants a fascinating sports book, read Boomtown. It's a book about Oklahoma City and the Thunder and their relationship with the city and all of that stuff. One of the things that two things never really get reported when people talk about that trade. One is that they offered Harden a bunch of money, and he didn't want to take it. He wanted out. He wanted to be his own guy. He wanted to stay one more year, and then he was going to leave. And the Thunder weren't going to do that. They were either going to get value for him or they were going to sign him. And so they thought that he wanted to start. At the time, Thabo Sefolosha was their starting two guard. They thought he wanted to start, so they said, "All right, we're gonna let you start this preseason." And it didn't work out. He wasn't comfortable. They didn't look the same way. They didn't have a lot of chemistry. It turned their bench. They were trying to still figure out the bench. So that wasn't working. And then he came back and he said, the Thunder were willing to do whatever he wanted to do. He came back after the fact and said that I wanted to start and they wouldn't let me. That was a lie. It was one of the reasons the Thunder were pretty pissed off. And then the other thing was the Thunder knew it never got out, but when the Thunder made the NBA Finals the year before, they split the first two games in Oklahoma City. And they went to Miami to play LeBron and D-Wade and Chris Bosh and all those guys. 3 games in Miami. And James Harden was out until the wee hours of the morning every one of those nights. There are people in NBA circles who will tell you that James Harden was not completely himself on games 3 and 4 of that series. And if you go back and watch, he was awful. He was nothing compared to what he was in the series before when the Thunder beat the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. Kylan Hill, I should have gotten into this. Kylan Hill has left Mississippi State. There's people do the pirate ship thing with Leach. In year 1, people are jumping off the ship. The ship is kind of crashing. If I'm a Mississippi State fan, it worries me a lot. Doesn't have the program momentum right now that Lane Kiffin does at Ole Miss. And Lane Kiffin's 1-4. That Elijah Drinkwitz has at Missouri. That Sam Pittman has at Arkansas. Has none of that at Mississippi State. Yeah, he gets a lot of Twitter stuff, but I don't sense that program has momentum. Leif says, here's the real question, and this is a really good question. He says, do you think Becky Hammon is the next coach at Oklahoma City? So she was what, the first female assistant coach on the bench, the first bench coach, female bench coach in the NBA with the Spurs. Billy Donovan's now the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. The Thunder are getting ready to rebuild, I would guess. She's certainly qualified. Sam Presti's the kind of guy to do it. I would wonder if, I can't believe I'm saying this, I would wonder, would that be a job that Becky Hammon would want? Knowing that whoever is the next coach of the Thunder, assuming that they tear the pieces apart, that they trade Chris Paul, that they trade Dennis Schroeder, that they move Steven Adams, that they go super young, you're not going to win like that in the NBA. Not in the West, as loaded as the West will be the next couple of years. I wonder if that's a job she would want to take where the odds are from a win-loss standpoint, it would look like failure. And I wonder if she would view that as a negative for future female coaching candidates in the NBA. That would be the other side of that I would wonder about. I would wonder if people close to her would say, wait for a better opportunity. Chance is moving today. Chase Parham's moving today. That's why he's not here. We're going to have to go short tomorrow, so I went ahead and brought you a podcast. Plus, I wanted to see if I could do this by myself. When I was in Mobile, sometimes I would have to do 3 hours of radio by myself. I'd go super guest happy because that's easy. It's kind of lazy. Also stops you from having to prepare. So I wanted to see if I could make myself do some of this a little bit in case there ever came a time where I needed to do it by myself for a few days because he wanted to go on vacation or whatever, where I'm not dependent. I'm sure he feels the same way, where he could do it without me. Podcast also brought to you by Oxford University Bank, OUB, locally owned and operated right here in Oxford. When you deposit money at Oxford University Bank, that money and the vast majority of the bank's profits go right back into the Oxford community. OUB gives you the comfort of home, all the benefits the big mega banks provide, all the technology and products you can want, all with a personal touch. When you call OUB, you speak directly with a live person. No 10 buttons to push, no 5 minutes to wait. OUB also has a commercial checking account now paying 1% interest as long as you keep $10,000 in the account. It comes with fully interactive online banking. To learn more, check out liveoxfordbankoxford.com or call 662-234-6668. OUB is FDIC insured. I'll have my mailbag up tomorrow. It is brought to you by Whitney McNutt of Tommy Morgan Incorporated Realtors, serving you for all your real estate needs in Oxford and Tupelo. She sells condos, land, commercial, and residential family homes. 662-567-2573 or 662-842-3844. We're also brought to you by the law firm of Bain, Moss, and Bowen, PLLC, located in historic downtown Corinth. Their firm practices a wide range of law from DUI defense to car wrecks to representing government entities. Bain, Moss, and Bowen is the only firm in Mississippi made up of a sitting state legislator, a former assistant district attorney, and a former circuit court judge. Their experience is unmatched in that regard, and you can tap into it by visiting them at 618 East Waldron Street in Corinth or by calling them at 662-287-1620. We're also brought to you by Meadowbrook Wealth Advisors of Raymond James, a team in Jackson, providing planning and investment guidance to clients across the state and the surrounding areas. Financial advisors Bill Geary, Logan Phillips, Chris Carrero, and Ryan Geary are partners with a commitment to personalized service. Call them at 601-368-2215 and see if they might be a good fit for your financial goals. Raymond James and Associates Incorporated, member New York Stock Exchange, SIPC. Game 6 of the World Series tonight. Dodgers can win a title. With the win tonight, the Dodgers can win a title. I think tonight's a big night for the Dodgers beyond just the win a championship. If the Dodgers win tonight, they put to bed a lot of this stuff about not being able to finish, not being able to get to the finish line. Dave Roberts is viewed completely differently from this point forward. I think he's an excellent manager. Gets criticism because they've lost some playoff series. Lost to the Cubs in 16, lost to the Astros in 17 in the cheating scandal series that's now kind of, kind of looked at differently today. But at the time, a lot of people said Dodgers choked. Haven't been able to finish the deal. Lost to the Red Sox in 18. Didn't get to the World Series in 19. And here they are today. They can win today if they can just beat Blake Snell. If they don't, Game 7's tomorrow night, and it's a bullpen game in all likelihood. And for me, it's the worst case scenario as someone who has long admired Clayton Kershaw. I think he's the best pitcher of this era. He doesn't have a World Series. He's had some playoff issues. Been great in this series. I guess he won Game 1. He won Game 5. The scenario where the Dodgers lose tonight and have to turn to Kershaw in Game 7 in relief, and he gets shelled and allows lazy media to go, oh, see, Clayton Kershaw can't win the big game. To me, that's kind of the nightmare scenario from his standpoint, from a Dodgers standpoint. The Dodgers are probably the best team, and Kershaw's done his part. The series ended tonight. Kershaw might very well be the MVP of the series. He was terrific in both games. If it goes to a seventh game, man, all bets are off. I mean, it's cliche, but it's true. All bets are off at that point. The Rays have played a bunch of those games. The Rays have played a lot of bullpen games because they've had so many starting pitching issues throughout the playoffs. They might be better positioned for a Game 7. Ben Leslie says, Neil, you underestimating Trump's chances? Ever seen a Berkeley take over like last weekend? Look, I've watched a lot on this. I had numbers up earlier today. I was looking at them. A lot of it depends on a couple of things, in my opinion. Which polls do you believe? I'll pull some stuff up right now. In fact, it's pretty interesting to me. So I use Real Clear Politics. I talked about this with Jeffrey a little while ago in the beer garden. The Trafalgar Group, they were really good in 2016. They weren't so good in 2018. I think they're biased a little bit to the right. And then I like 538, but I think it's biased a little bit to the left. Not in any kind of a malicious way. I just think there's some bias. I like Real Clear Politics. They take all the polls, they dig into them, they average them. And if they have bias, I don't see it. The articles that they link on their site every day are from all sides, conservative, liberal, and all parts in between. It has Trump closing ground in battleground states. Has Biden up 7.4 overall with an arrow going down. Because I don't think there's any question Trump is making up some ground here right now. And then it has, in the battleground states, on average, Biden's lead is down to 3.6. So the part that gets me when I watch it, two things. I look at some Senate races in Michigan where a lot of people believe John James has pulled ahead of Gary Peters. James is the African-American Republican. Sharp. Considered by a lot of people to be a future star in the Republican Party. Peters is kind of a weak candidate, and James has clear momentum there. I think John James could pull Donald Trump over the finish line in Michigan where it's really close. In North Carolina, the Republican incumbent, Tom Tillis, who's not a particularly great candidate, he still has kind of a lead over Cunningham. Cal Cunningham would have beaten Tillis before the personal scandal hit. That scandal hurt Cunningham. Kind of had a Hugh Freeze moment a little bit where he ran on morality and family and all of that stuff, and then the text popped up. That's a state that Donald Trump can't afford to lose. And then in Arizona, looks like the Democrat Mark Kelly is probably going to defeat the incumbent Republican Martha McSally. but maybe not by enough of a margin where that gets Biden Arizona. Because look, Trump's path is complicated. Again, I'm going to the Electoral College map. Right now it has Biden with 232, Trump with 125, and with 181 toss-ups. Electoral College toss-ups. Trump's got to be pretty clean to pull that off. I mean, we're talking about Arizona, Nevada, Minnesota, which I don't think is that much of a toss-up. I think Trump's going to lose Minnesota. I'm pulling this up right now. Trump in Minnesota right now is down 6. Biden has a 6-point lead in Minnesota. Iowa is super close. It's basically a toss-up right now. Biden up 0.8. That's so close to the margin of error that it's hardly worth noting. Wisconsin, where Biden's lead has shrunk. It's gone from 9 to 5. It's one of the I'm a little surprised Biden's not campaigning more than he is. Florida, where Biden had Obama out stumping for him today. Trump has a very small lead, well within the margin of error. Georgia, for whatever reason, is where Biden is today. Obviously, if Georgia went to Biden, the election's over. Trump has a small lead there, according to Real Clear Politics. We talked about North Carolina, where Biden's lead is down to a point. And in some polls, he's down by as many as 3. Then you get into the ones that I think are going to shape it. Ohio, where Trump right now has a lead of 0.6, according to Real Clear Politics. Trump is up by as many as 4 in the Trafalgar group, down by as many as 1 in Rasmussen. And you look in Pennsylvania, which is where a lot of people think it will be decided, that it's going to be a one-state night. The Real Clear Politics average has Biden up by 3.8. Insider Advantage has it as Trump plus 2. The Trafalgar Group has it as a tie. And then CNN has Biden up 10. Others have Biden up 2, 3, 5. Quinnipiac has Biden up 8. So there's a lot of variation there in the polls. So the thing that was fascinating to me, and I look at television and I don't know what I think. On one hand, you look on the television and Biden's nowhere. And even today at the Obama rally, there aren't a lot of people there. And I know they're spaced, and Biden's using the we don't want to have super spreader events. But I've never seen a political campaign run like this. Not saying it's wrong. I've just never seen a political campaign run like this. Meanwhile, Trump has these rallies all over the country. About to turn one on right now. And when you watch it, it's packed. Trump's out in the rain right now in, I think, Michigan. See where this is. I don't know. It doesn't say. Yeah, he's in Lansing, Michigan right now. In the rain, and it's packed behind him. Some people wearing masks, some people not wearing masks. I don't know. And then people talk about 160 million people are going to vote, which is an incredible number. 136 million voted in 2016. I don't know. The polls tell you that it's over, that Biden's going to win. My eyes tell me something different, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I always think about 2008 when you saw the people. There was so much energy on the campaign for Obama. He was like a rock star, and you knew he was going to win. There was nothing that could be done about it. There was nothing McCain could do. People say, well, he screwed up by putting Palin on his ticket. I don't think it matters. There was nothing he could do to beat him. And now I look at Trump, and it's like 16, where there were all these people at the rallies, and sure enough, even though the polls said he wasn't going to win, he won. So I expect a really close election. I expect it to be a long night. I don't think it's going to be an early call where the networks are proclaiming a victory. I think it's super close. With fall upon us, it's a great time to start preparing for colder weather. No one wants to come home, find out their heating system isn't working. Our friends over at Comer Heating and Air have you covered. Comer Heating and Air is the name you can trust. It brings more than 50 years of professional HVAC experience to Oxford, Tupelo, and the surrounding area. Comer Heating and Air is offering a special fall preventative maintenance agreement to make sure your heating system is running in tip-top shape. Make sure to call Comer Heating and Air at 662-801-1777 for all your heating and cooling needs. That's Comer Heating and Air, 662-801-1777. And we are brought to you by The Rogue. They sponsor our pregame show. We'll come on the pregame show Scoreboard Business at 1 o'clock on Saturday. We'll have programming on before that. The Rogue's your destination for fine men's clothing. It's also home to Duckhead, which is returned to The Rogue. The return of this icon brand remains true to its roots by producing garments of enduring quality and timeless style. So come by The Rogue, welcome back this American icon, and join the revival. 4450 I-55 North in Jackson or at therogue.com, 601-362-6383. Also brought to you by Heritage Properties, home to 3 communities in Oxford, Faulkner Flats, Cambridge Station, and Lexington Point. All 3 properties are multifamily housing. They also offer on-site management and maintenance. They're pet-friendly, and they offer short-term leases. Lexington Point, located less than a mile from the Ole Miss campus, has spacious 1-, 2-, and 3-bedroom apartment homes with free cable and internet, covered parking, and much more. So get in touch with them at 662-234-4558. Dustin says, do you think they should be able to count ballots after the election on Tuesday? Do you think it sets up a lawsuit? And if so, does that make Nancy the president for a little while? Listen, man, I hope for our country's sake that we don't have one of those scandals. In an ideal world, no, they're not counting votes after Tuesday. If the votes aren't in by Tuesday, they're not counting them. That creates these issues. The one thing that we should all have learned by now, we saw this at 9/11 when people rallied around Bush, whether you were for him or not. And we've seen how divisive this has been during coronavirus and all that stuff this year. And there's some Trump fatigue. There's media fatigue. There's COVID fatigue. We don't need another scandal. I'm hoping that one of these people win cleanly. Win by enough that the other person, I know I'm asking for a lot here, gracefully concedes. And we get to see the power of America, which is either a democratic election and or the peaceful transfer of power. That's what I hope. I'm not particularly optimistic, but that's what I'm hoping for. So I don't want to see that. We don't need to be Bush Gore on steroids. We need it to end on Tuesday, on Wednesday, with people either accepting that there's going to be a change or accepting that the president's been reelected. Our country has enough stuff to deal with. We don't need a epic court battle that ends up in the Supreme Court. All of that stuff. We don't need more riots on the streets. We need to, like I said earlier, get together, and we need to make it. We need to rally as a country and get back on our feet, kind of grow a pair, have a little courage. I'll leave you with this. My friend Chris Lee, I mentioned him earlier, covers Vanderbilt for Rivals.com. He says Vanderbilt's having concerns they will play again, so that'll be how I leave it with you. Vanderbilt has been, in Chris's words, really COVID woke throughout the process. I can tell you there's been frustration at the league level about Vanderbilt. They don't have a lot of numbers anyway. They had a lot of opt-outs, defections. They're well under the 85. They don't have a lot of margin for error. So stay tuned. We will be back tomorrow. We'll try to get Lane Kiffin tomorrow. We'll get his thoughts on what he's hearing as of this afternoon. Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, 3 o'clock, Saturday in Nashville. We'll come on probably as early as 11 a.m. We'll be with you throughout the day. That's the plan. And into the night for hand raise guys after Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. We'll have basketball coverage for you tomorrow and Thursday at rebelgrove.com as well. So thanks for sticking with me here in the stream. It's been an interesting show. Thank you for being a part of it. Really appreciate it. Until next time, take care.